Orest Sushko is the director of the Broadcast-Broadband Convergence B²C Lab at Humber Polytechnic. He's a graduate of both McMaster and Toronto Metropolitan Universities and a Fulbright specialist with the over 30 years of audio engineering experience in broadcasting television, music, film, post-production, and system design. Orest's interest has applied in research focused on emerging audio technology, design, and functionality, including mobile SDK applications and a development of audio watermark technologies. Ahead of joining Humber in 2019, Orest was undertaking research and development opportunities with the ATSC 3 in Canada and brought the vision of the ATSC Lab to the Humber Polytechnics. The first of the kind in North America, Humber Polytechnic has established the Broadcast-Broadband Convergence B²C Lab as a world-class industry research center designed to explore the multi-sectional business applications enabled in the new ATSC 3 television broadcast standards and convergence of other global IP data delivery standards, including 5G. The B²C Lab offers leading-edge infrastructure, including 3 5G core networks, an RF anisotropic test chamber, and a custom multi-transmitter ATSC-3 broadcast testbed across 4 transmitter sites, including Toronto CN Tower. Together with an accomplished team, the B²C Lab fosters partnerships with Canada and the multinational stakeholders leading in the development and new products of services with a low-risk innovation environment. Ladies and gentlemen, Orest Sushko.
Thanks, Jim. Good morning, everyone. Forgive my voice. I'm just getting over a bit of a cold and have some extant laryngitis, so I'll try and do my best to keep my voice alive. So nice to see so many familiar faces in the room. I've had the pleasure of attending CCBE in the last couple of years, and great to be part of your thriving community.
There's only one thing left, Orest.
I got 5 minutes.
Yeah.
So I'm going to talk fast. I'm going to move through the slides pretty quickly. Thanks so much for your patience, and thanks to the entire technical crew of CCBE to work this out. So what I wanted to chat with you about today is not so much directly ATSC 3, the new television broadcast transmission standard, but asking you to kind of suspend your beliefs and kind of shut the TV off and think outside the TV box. And I'm going to go through a presentation that involves NextGen Broadcast Innovation for critical communications. This is something that was born in the lab through different stakeholders coming forward to us, expressing interest in the standard, in this case for non-television applications. So I'm not going to discuss television applications today. I'm not going to go deep into the standard, but it's a way for you to think about how ATSC 3 can offer services, both television and non-television. So I'm going to start with a scenario here very briefly. How many of you remember something called, or this instance that took place in Mississauga in 1979? So it was the Mississauga train rail disaster. There was a ball bearing on one particular rail car that was carrying chemicals that failed, caused a chain reaction. Trains left the track. Chlorine gas and other gases went into the air and exploded. And it was also known as the Mississauga Miracle because no one was killed in this incident. But this was the largest peacetime evacuation of a civilian population up until Hurricane Katrina. And this particular event, I think it caused the displacement of over 200 to 250,000 people in this area. So that's about 20 kilometers west of here, more or less, Mavis Road, so it's not very far, kind of on our doorstep. And you can see various kind of critical infrastructure hanging there very gracefully. There's some hydro lines and power lines and phone lines, etc. And it's interesting because in this particular era, we had a whole different landscape of telecommunications than we currently do today. So I just wanted you to keep that in mind as I set the stage. So there's been kind of an evolution in wireless communication since that time. We're all pretty familiar with this evolution of 1G, 2G, 3G, 4G, 5G, 6G, 7G, whatever comes next. So there's no challenge in moving forward on the cellular mobile communication side. That's all moved quite rapidly over time. But if you look at the television side, it's a bit more, dare I say, embarrassing to see how slowly the evolution of the television system has progressed over time. So what we're actually involved in the lab in many ways when we mention convergence is actually kind of an integration. It's ways of looking at how the next-gen broadcast system can be integrated into a broadband wireless world, be it the present broadband wireless world or the future world, and how it can actually save lives. So very briefly on ATSC3, and many of you might be already familiar with the basic characteristics of it. It's essentially one large data pipe. And in that data pipe, you can decorate the payload and run multiple services for B2B and B2C models inside that space. So you can do consumer business delivery models or business to business delivery models. It offers orthogonal frequency division multiplexing and LDPC for enhanced error correction. So that allows much better performance in multipath interference environments. You can start to move the SNR quite low down towards the noise floor. And you can have options on different mod cods where you can run different services at different mod cod rates inside the same signal. I should note that the physical specification or the physical layer of ATSC3 is a Canadian innovation. It was developed in CRC Ottawa, the ICED Spectrum Lab, and it was developed by Dr. Yeon Woo and as the principal research scientist and a team of really talented engineers and scientists at CRC. So we're at the lab, we're essentially standing on the shoulders of this innovation and starting to build it forward in different ways. So some quick highlight points here as to the advantages of integrating the broadcast system into the wireless communications world. As we're all aware, it operates on existing infrastructure. It's hardened infrastructure. You can simultaneously reach an infinite number of receivers and devices over a wide market area. So essentially, the more devices, I don't have my phone with me, but the more devices I put on the mobile network, the less efficient that network is. The more devices I put on the broadcast network, the more efficient the system is. So cellular network congestion moves up. In broadcast, network congestion is not really an issue. I can hit an infinite number of receivers instantly in that respect. So there's also the IP-based nature of ATSC3 where we can start to seamlessly integrate and internetwork with other IP systems, including 5G. I think the common clock for convergence with 5G is 384 kilohertz. And you're also capable of reaching and targeting an infinite number of mobile devices and terminals. So some of the work that you'll see, I haven't fully demonstrated it today because we're short on time, I'll keep it very brief, but we can actually start to address and target different devices in the marketplace that are IP-based, and we can broadcast all those IPs out over the carousel framework of broadcast and push it out, and each individual device just receives its own target IP address. So we can, through broadcast, target individual devices. So a quick, brief overview of the lab. We are North America's actually only front-facing industry research center. We're located just up the road, Highway 27 in Finch, or just south of Finch here, at Humber Polytechnic's North Campus. We explore convergence in a multi-sectoral capacity using other global data delivery standards in conjunction with ATSC when it's needed. And we're equipped, as Jim mentioned earlier, with an ATSC3 broadcast testbed and a couple of 5G core networks, RF anechoic test chamber, and we have a host of microwave test equipment. So we do testing and deployment and implementation projects for industry and municipal partners. We also do a measure of scientific research. This is the research that's involved, that's 4 or 5 steps ahead of where industry is, where individuals or stakeholders are asking if we can explore that a little bit farther with them. So we foster relationships between industry, between municipalities, between the public sector, with the college, and we can support innovation locally, regionally, and nationally. Again, forgive me, I'm going to move pretty quick through this just to try and keep us on track. So our broadcast testbed is located here in the Toronto space. We have 3 transmitters actually 6 transmitters running on Humber campus property. We have the main Humber campus north site here at 27 and Humber College Boulevard. So we have transmitters set up there. We have one about 1.5 kilometers north off of Carrier Drive, just north of Finch. Those sites are effectively kind of co-located. They're very close line of sight. Then we have a third site down at Lakeshore campus at Lakeshore and Kipling, which is about 15 kilometers as the crow flies. And those 3 sites are all operated on Humber campus property. At those 3 sites, we operate 2 channels, channels 22 and channels 28. And we essentially then have 6 transmitters running on those 3 sites. Those are all very low power. The first site, Humber TX Site 2, which is Humber Carrier Drive, is about 15 watts TPO. So it's quite low in power. I should mention that it's much more important for us to be low power than it is to be no power. We want to be able to stay inside a very small test kind of space, and we want to be able to test different types of technologies using the standard. So we're not in the broadcast business. We don't offer a commercial service. Our licenses are through ISED. We are CRTC compliant through BPR 10, and we operate under the no interference rule for other broadcasters. So I'm very happily, when we started the process with our broadcast consultant, Francois Gauthier, I was very grateful for the support we had from all the broadcasters who were open to us testing with ATSC 3 in the Toronto space. Site number 1 includes, which is the main Barrett campus, is a 400 watt TPO setup. And Lakeshore campus, site 3, is about a 50 watt TPO setup. So 3 channels on those 3 sites. And about 1.5 years ago, we integrated, through the gracious participation and support of Rogers and Corus, we tie into the commercial infrastructure on the CN Tower through a wideband port. And we come up on channel 28 on the CN Tower at a glorious 10 watts TPO. So again, very low power, but it's much more important for us to be able to test this technology. And we're not interested in reaching a large Canadian population because, let's face it, there are really no ATSC 3 receivers in the air in the space, so there's really nobody watching our signal at this point. We are developing, and this is very closely with Dr. Yan Wu, who's the chair of Tower Network Implementation Team for ATSC IT5. We are developing a project where we can connect all broadcast towers together and start pushing IP up individual towers. This will be a 5G-based scalable configurable network that's capable of using existing TV infrastructure. So this would essentially be the tower communication system that runs post-gateway in the transmission chain. We're also looking, as part and parcel of that, as an extension backwards in, is to running and developing what's called a broadcast core network. So broadcasters don't have a core network, the mobile carriers do, but there are ways to actually couple these assets together, broadcast assets with wireless assets, and slicing a 5G core in order to get that kind of coupling. So stakeholders that are verticalized, like Bell and Rogers, that operate both mobile spectrum and broadcast spectrum, could take advantage of this, as could other broadcasters that have access to 5G telecom infrastructure. So onward to Calgary. You remember the first slide I showed you about the Mississauga train derailment? We had one of the folks from Calgary Emergency Management Agency have a conversation with us, and he said, Orest, pretend that a rail car explodes in downtown Calgary in today's day and age, and pretend that it slices and cuts all the fiber in the rail corridor. It's just gone. It's completely decimated. And he said, all our services in Canada, and the US for that matter, hang on one pole outside your house. Hydro, TELUS, Bell, Rogers, they all swing on that one pole. And he looked at me and he said, pretend all that's gone too in that whole area. And then he picked up his phone and he said, pretend none of this stuff works. He says, that's how I have to scrimmage with my emergency management teams. And he says, I have to be very concerned about the public, obviously, but I also have to be much more concerned about my first responders that don't have access to communications. And he looked at a particular pager I'll show you momentarily, and he said, I like this broadcast technology because it runs on a whole separate system. And he said, the city of Calgary, as other cities, don't purchase infrastructure for ROI. We purchase it because it works. And we understand that ATSC 3 and the work you're doing in non-television applications is still very much a nascent technology. But we are very interested in working with Humber and other stakeholders and your developmental partners to ensure that it does become an emerging and a mature technology for broadcast communications. So what we've done in Calgary is they initially wanted to set up a lab the way we set up a lab in Toronto. And I said, we can actually host services for you from Toronto. So we've currently set up 2 1 gig EPL fiber connections between Toronto and Calgary. And we can push data to Calgary process it in Toronto. They can send us data, raw data from Calgary. We'll process it in our experimental TV station through our air chain and send it back out to them. And it runs off the Harvard Tower on a 500-watt transmitter. So we're pushing signal direct to Calgary. And a big thank you to Paul East and the folks from Harvard Media for all their support and helping us in the integration. Sorry, Paul, I can't see you behind the pole there. So what we're doing in Calgary is we've essentially built a generic data pipe. And in that data pipe, we're servicing different business units within the city. So for example, the police, fire, and EMS folks want to be able to have a different communication system in the event of a perilous damage to their current communication systems. So what we've done is we've started to develop a paging system, or not develop a paging system, but integrate a paging system, which you'll see shortly, for police, fire, and EMS. We're very early on in this process. We're currently testing the applications in a innovation technology center located in Calgary. So we have to remember that the business units know nothing of broadcast, and they're not fully convinced that this stuff can work. So we're sort of in that first phase where we're kind of introducing and socializing the technology with them to help them grow more comfortable. So we're working with that team of first responders. We'll also eventually be working with the transit network, their LRT system, to put signage and moving video onto moving assets like trains and buses. So there's a lot of advantages of broadcast mobility with ATSC, so we can take advantage of that fact as well. And roads and traffic. I've included the image here of traffic controllers. So City of Calgary spends about $5,000 a year to roll a truck to each controller to update it with a USB stick. If we can put an ATSC3 television receiver that can receive ATSC3 signal, we can target each traffic controller in the city, be them 5,000 controllers, 10,000 controllers. Again, we can hit an infinite number of devices. So we're starting early days of those discussions to explore that infrastructure. And what Calgary has done is they've actually started to develop with us a variable digital signage application where we can actually take images and we can post them onto the sign and we can customize them through a GUI. And we can allow those signs, again, to be individual IP devices to respond to those messages and pick up individual curated signage information. And again, that's all running off the glorious Harvard Tower for now. So we're a single stick in that market. Eventually, we'll probably need some gap fillers as we move to phase 2. But we understand that we have to start crawl, walk, run our way through that process. And we're very grateful for the city's patience as we kind of work through the process. So on to this, one of the key applications that we're bringing into Calgary. This is a prototype of a broadcast pager that was developed with the state of North Carolina, PBS North Carolina, and an embedded engineering company called Device Solutions, all based out of Raleigh. So there's a whole bunch of information here. I won't go through it all for the sake of time, but I will share one instance where you can actually bring, I think it's point number 5 here, or point number 6. You can actually include visualization data. So one of the things that we're looking at doing with Calgary is importing GIS data sets that can show the location of infrastructure in the city, fire hydrants, et cetera. Bring all that into the pager. Also, with this pager, there's a Bluetooth connection. So if cellular systems do go down, your Bluetooth network is still working on your phone. You can couple this literally like a brick to your phone, and you can pull in information without the cellular system. So again, just another form and another layer of redundancy that's built into this ecosystem. I do have a video here to kind of describe, which I think will be important to kind of show. So I don't know, do I have audio set up on this?
Yeah, we did plug
You should.
Okay, let's try it and see if it works. So before I play this, I'm just going to share the fact that broadcast really has advantages in a lot of rural, remote areas. In major cities and major urban centers, there's a lot of redundancies already built in. I've had conversations with the Toronto Police Service and the City of Toronto Emergency Management. And there are certain applications they're interested in looking at as well. But at the same time, we've had stakeholders like OPP come to us and say, this is of great value to us in rural, remote areas. If we have to cover huge tracts of land, and there's existing broadcast infrastructure in those spaces, there's a potential to make use of that. So this is a particular instance where in rural remote areas, fire departments don't run on Motorola P25s or Tetra systems. They run on analog tone pagers. This is 50-year-old technology, which these areas are still running in. This is a particular example of how long it takes to formalize a dispatch. And this was taken actually in the US from a rural Missouri kitchen fire. So I'll just let this run and you'll be able to see on the screen what's happening as far as propagation delay. So this is the analog two-tone pager system issuing its call out. So these trucks are all being notified, but they don't know where to go yet.
Forty 34, 40 24, 41 25, 41 14, 37 35, 37 20, 40 27, 40 02, 41 02. Respond to a first alarm, Florissant. Kitchen. 450 Naomi Avenue, Crushing of Bob and Ray. Respond on Tech 10. 40 34, 40 24, 41 25, 41 14, 37 35, 37 20, 40 27, 40 02, 41 02. Respond to a first alarm in Florissant. Kitchen. At 450 Naomi Avenue, Crushing of Bob and Ray. All units respond on Tech 10, Tech 10, time is 12:20.
So you can see there by the listing, 42 seconds for the location information to come out. That's pretty typical for this many trucks or instances to roll. If a fire doubles in size every minute, you can go back to the rail car explosion in Mississauga or a Calgary rail car explosion or an explosion, heaven forbid, here or down in Darlington or Bruce or Pickering. You start to get into situations where we can get moved from a very clean green situation to a catastrophic situation very quickly. So especially, again, in these rural remote areas, this can be of tremendous value as far as understanding how we can move data and we can aggregate the system to move and work much more efficiently. So I'm going to give you the same scenario of the analog two-tone paging system now all working through the broadcast system through the pager prototype that you just saw. Same amount of information, all the same characteristics coming through. That's it, done. So much different when you're looking at the actual propagation delay for this system to deliver all that's critical 911 information. And this can be connected directly to the PSAP, right directly from the 911 call center. So here's just a quick video from PBS North Carolina that actually encapsulates the innovation and how important it is.
911, what's the location of your emergency?
When a call like this comes in, every second counts.
Connect you with the Greenville Police, don't hang up.
It can often take up to a minute for first responders to receive this kind of alert. But PBS North Carolina is helping to reduce that time to just a few seconds.
In some emergencies, 15 seconds can make the difference of a patient not making it or a house burning to the ground.
The same broadcast technology that brings you your favorite PBS shows is also used to provide first responders with vital information during emergencies. And now we're upgrading our broadcast technology to NextGen TV. That means a stronger signal for all the shows you love and for the people who count on us in emergencies.
911, what's the location of your emergency?
New technology is more dependable and more reliable than what we've used in the past.
Unlike traditional paging systems, which have limited range, the NextGen TV signal can reach remote and dense areas in almost every location throughout the state. That means instant alerts to first responders.
On a good day, we don't respond to any emergencies in the community. When we do respond, we want the most reliable and quickest response that we can have.
Together with partners like Device Solutions, PBS North Carolina is leading the nation with our innovative use of broadcast spectrum to help first responders. For over 60 years, we've served our community with life-changing television and services.
Always look for the people who are helping.
And with NextGen TV, we can help save lives, too.
So that encapsulates the application itself in an empirical sense. One of the interesting aspects of the PBS North Carolina experiment was they ran this in the western part of the state and in different parts of the state of North Carolina a couple of years ago, experimentally. And at the end of I think it was a 12 or 18-month window of experimentation, the firefighters said, can we actually keep these? We know they're still just alpha prototypes, but we want to be able to keep them because they're really effective for us. And when they delivered the first paging unit to one of the firehouses, to the fire captain, the pager went off. And the fire captain asked, is that a dummy page or is that a real page? And he said, no, that's a real page. He says, because my other device hasn't received it yet. So again, really critical when we start to look at redundancy and how the communication can be much more effective. So this is another kind of novel example of areas that we're interested in working in, and I'm using North Carolina here again. This is from Hurricane Helene that took place, I believe, last year. So again, you remember the image in the middle sort of depicts that scenario I depicted earlier, where pretend all that infrastructure is gone, hydro, and down in the US, it would be Verizon, AT&T, and T-Mobile. All that fiber, all that air fiber is just gone. So what we're actually looking at is exploring how in the state of North Carolina, during Hurricane Helene, the 15 PBS NC towers, which are all between 1,000 and 2,000 feet high, none of those towers went down. One of them ran out of diesel, I think after day 4, day 5, they went and topped it up. But about 1,000 cell phone towers went down in the state of North Carolina. So we're now actually looking at how in different areas, potentially in Canada, we can support innovation where we can carry backhaul information from the broadcast system and push it over to the cellular system. So this is an area where we can support redundancies across these two systems. So again, we're not looking at ways to replace the current broadband wireless world. We're actually looking at ways that we can augment it with the broadcast system. There's also another application we're interested in working on where you may have recalled in the California wildfires earlier this year how a drone hit the Quebec water bomber, the slurry aircraft. Drone didn't know where the plane was, plane didn't know where the drone was. We're actually going to be hopefully getting involved with a company that's developed a program or an application to help support operational airspace safety, where we can actually take the drone telemetry position, push it down to the ground, and then using ATSC 3 broadcast, push all that data and positional information up into the ionosphere to all the crewed aircraft that are in that space. So this is really important for wildland firefighting operations because generally drones have to run in the evening to do aerial ignitions and intel and reconnaissance and all those sorts of other features that they support, but they can't fly at the same time with crewed aircraft. So this will make wildland firefighting operations much more efficient. This is actually designed to run off a mobile truck that can be driven into a particular area, but it could also be running on existing infrastructure that's in any part of a wildland firefighting region. So lastly, I'm just going to leave you with some thoughts about GPS. So GPS, as we all know, is sort of ubiquitous now. And in many ways, it's become a victim of its own success. We all used it so much over the last 50 years since its existence that our whole economy is now structured around it in this respect. The US right now has no terrestrial ground-based backup system for GPS. We rely completely on the US constellation here in Canada. Other systems around the world all have terrestrial ground-based backups. So the Russian system GLONASS has a Chaka system that's ground-based. The Baidu, the Chinese system, has ground-based backup. The European Galileo system has ground-based backup. But the US has realized that this has been a challenge for them over the last 25 years, and they haven't developed a ground-based system. As it's been said to me by a number of scientists, if satellites were the solution to everything, there'd be no reason for ground-based systems. So we definitely need to look at how ground-based support can help this. And along comes the broadcast community that says through ATSC, we can actually deliver precision time through the transmitter towers and function as an overlay to GPS. So this is actually an instance where the towers aren't providing they're distributing the precision time, but they're actually being referenced by ELRAN or referenced by PTP or referenced by rubidium, cesium clocks, etc. So I won't go into detail on this, but I've just noted in the bottom here highlighted that most municipalities, and this is data according to ICED here in Canada, most municipalities have a 3 to 5 day risk mitigation strategy for loss of GPS. So I'm not talking momentary loss when you're behind a building or multipath interference, but longer term loss. And it's been explained to me that Toronto Stock Exchange would shut down after 5 days. The holdover on its clocks would start to fail. So we're actually starting to work with critical infrastructure stakeholders in the lab in the next coming weeks to test and use BPS to extend holdover of PTP clocks. That's really important for us to start looking at a ground-based system here, especially for us as we want to try and develop sovereign solutions in Canada. So the broadcast positioning system is a method of estimating time and position at a receiver using 3.0 signals. It's compliant and embedded into the ATSC 3 standard itself. It's independent and standalone. A single tower can provide timing, 3 to 4 towers can provide time and positioning estimation. You can detect GPS spoofing. So if you run both systems together and you're noticing nefarious activity on GPS and BPS is giving you a different result, you know somebody's playing with one of those systems in terms of denying spoofing or jamming. And can also enable hybrid activity where both of them work together and you can integrate those into a single receiver. So for us in Toronto here, we have a live trial running. Oh, sorry, just one more slide here, where you can provide any sort of redundant traceable time source for these towers. So it wouldn't necessarily be positioning every broadcast tower with a cesium clock. It could be every 10th tower, and the towers can start to listen to each other. I won't go into detail on that, but we have a lot of information on our website that can actually take you through that process through different presentations. I should note that the key synchronizer receiver technology for BPS has actually been developed by Avitech Corp. Many of you are familiar with Avitech based here in Toronto. They've developed the synchronizer receiver technology, which is the heart of BPS. So infrastructure is already built. The towers are out there. ATSC 3 is an international standard. It can offer passive consumer service, independent frequency diversity. That's quite important. If you're running BPS time across a whole series of television channels in a market at much, much higher power than a very faint GPS signal, it's much more difficult to jam the entire television system than it is to jam a single GPS signal off a satellite. And you can have the ability to cover, to have nationwide coverage. These are the particular trials that are taking place across the US on the left side of the screen, and Humber's now offering a trial for BPS. What's really important for us in Canada is because we're running off BC22, the ISED license for experimental, we can actually test jamming and spoofing on our own signal. And when I mentioned that to the NRC, they said, "You're going to jam GPS?" I said, "No, we're just going to jam our own TV signal because nobody's watching it." And we have that ability to check and test multipath interference. A lot of things we can do in Toronto to help advance research of this particular innovation. And I'm probably way past time, minus 9 minutes, so I'll cut it there. And thank you again for your time, and sorry for the technical issues that we had.
Orest, we really want to thank you for coming, and I am sorry about everything that happened here just a little while ago. We want to present you with a gift, and hopefully we can have you come back and do another CCBE presentation sometime in the future. I hope so. All right.